ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। In this session we will be discussing from the 20th verse of the 10th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Anyonyami asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam kauravendra purastrinam sarva shruti manoharaha. The meaning of this verse is, absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is glorified in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. This is a very interesting verse in this particular chapter, which describes the departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka from Hastinapura. So the ladies who were the relatives of the kings and the royalty in the palace of Hastinapura, they went on top of the roof of the houses and they began to talk of Krishna, because they were always absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Here the word is used, Uttama Shloka Chetasam. Uttama Shloka. Krishna's another name is Uttama Shloka. Means he is glorified in select poetry by great poets, by great devotees. In all the Vedas, he is glorified by select poetry, choicest poetry. So they began to talk of him, of Krishna. And this talk is described here in this verse, was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. So Srila Prabhupada explains the purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. What does Bhagavad Gita say? Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyo. By all the Vedas am I to be known. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada says further, factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as the Vedas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. This is also mentioned in the scriptures. Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tatha Adavante Cha Madhye Cha Harihi Sarvatra Giyate. The meaning of this verse is, in the Vedic literature, including the Ramayana, Puranas and Mahabharata, from the very beginning, Adav, to the end, Antecha, as well as within the middle, Madhyecha, only Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained, is glorified. And in the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Bhagavata is Krishna Katha. It is exclusive glorification of Krishna from the beginning till the end, throughout the Bhagavatam. Therefore, While the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. It's generally seen that when ladies gather, they have a tendency to talk amongst themselves about some subject. Now, the subject they choose depends on the level of their consciousness. Anybody, for that matter. Like Srila Prabhupada explains, when businessmen gather in one place, what will their subject matter be? If they are seriously absorbed in business, then their talk will be about business only. Similarly, if scholars of some particular subject, they gather in one place, they will discuss about that subject matter only. They will talk about that subject matter only. So like that, these ladies, they were not just talking about some ordinary topics. No. They were talking about Lord Krishna. Why? Because they were absorbed in thinking about the transcendental qualities of Krishna, which means that they are all devotees of Krishna. So this is one characteristic of devotee. Devotee is always absorbed in thought of Krishna. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if you really are serious about devotional service, about bhakti, you want to become Krishna's devotee, then you simply think of Krishna always. Think of Krishna always. Conversely, devotees of Krishna always think of Krishna. They are always thinking of Krishna. So therefore, when they talk, the subject matter for their talking is only Krishna and nothing else. So Srila Prabhupada explains that why is it said that the talk of these ladies about Krishna was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. So Srila Prabhupada explains, anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti mantra. Shruti means the Vedas, the original Vedas. There are songs of Thakur Narottam Dasa, one of the Acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. Narottam Das Thakur is a great Acharya. He was a contemporary of Srila Jiva Goswami, who was one of the chief disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he learnt this Bhagavatam under Srila Jiva Goswami, and then he has written so many songs in simple Bengali language explaining the same subject matter so that it is easily understandable by common people. He was preaching in Bengal, so it's written in Bengali language. Now, another Acharya, Thakur Vishwanath Chakravarti, who is a very learned Acharya of the same Sampradaya, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has approved the songs by Thakur Narottam Dasa to be as good as Vedic mantras, even though they are written in simple Bengali language, but the subject matter is simply describing Krishna. So therefore they are as good as Vedic mantras. And Prabhupada says this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. Of course, the original Vedas are always in Sanskrit language. But even if something is written in simple Bengali, or for that matter in Karnataka, Purandara Dasa has written lakhs and lakhs of songs in simple Kannada language. The subject matter is the subject matter of Krishna. the subject matter of the Vedas. So, the subject matter is important, the language is immaterial. So, it is said here, the ladies who were all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord developed the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. Now, in the next few verses, there will be description of what was their subject of discussion, what were they talking. So, it's all full of Vedic wisdom. Their talk is full of Vedic wisdom. So, Srila Prabhupada explains, therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, these ladies, they are just householders. They are not particularly meant to study the Vedas, go to Gurukul, in the Vedic culture at least. But that does not mean they are totally ignorant about Krishna or they are totally ignorant about the Vedic conclusions. No. By absorbing their mind in thoughts and actions of the Supreme Lord, they develop the consciousness of Vedic wisdom. How? By the grace of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And how are they able to get that grace of the Supreme Lord? Because Krishna is seated in the heart of every one of us, every living being. So if somebody is absorbed in the thought of Krishna, Krishna enlightens such a devotee from within. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam ye namam upayanti te tesham evanukampartham aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. Krishna enlightens from within the heart of his devotees. Therefore, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the most confidential instruction, become my devotee, then Krishna will enlighten. There is no need of specifically attempting to study the Vedas, which are very difficult, because the Vedic language is not easy. Even for Sanskrit scholars, Vedic language is not easily understood in the proper perspective. So therefore, Krishna says, you simply become my devotee. Think of me. Discuss about me. And then I will enlighten you from within your heart. All the Vedic conclusions will be revealed by Krishna in the heart of the devotee. Whatever they spoke, these ladies of Hastinapura, was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. Why? Why is it like that? Prabhupada says, the Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord. The Upanishads are actually the philosophical portions of the Vedas which describe the absolute truth. And the absolute truth is described both impersonal and personal. So the impersonal descriptions are very prominent in the Upanishads portions of the Vedas. Whereas the personal aspect of the absolute truth, that is the personality of Godhead, Krishna, Rama, Narasimha, Varaha, all the incarnations are more nicely described in detail in the Puranas, Itihasas, like Ramayana, entirely about Lord Rama. Mahabharata, about Krishna and many other incarnations. Bhagavatam, fully about Krishna and his incarnations. So the Puranas are describing the personal feature of the absolute truth. Therefore, the discussions or the descriptions in the Puranas, Itihasas about the personal feature of the Lord are more attractive and pleasing to hear than the descriptions in the Upanishads. Therefore, it is said the ladies' talks were more attractive than the Vedic hymns. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.